They say when you're close to death, you finally see things clearly. In my case, it wasn't a bright light or a tunnel. It was a fluorescent bulb flickering above a hospital bed, and a doctor saying words I didn't want to hear. You have acute myeloid leukemia. You'll need a bone marrow transplant to survive. I was 68, a widower, and I had 2 children, Daniel and Emma, both in their 30s. Smart, successful, and, as I painfully learned, utterly self-interested. I hadn't told them yet that I was wealthy. For years, I kept my fortune quiet. My late wife and I had built it slowly: investments, real estate, and a modest software company I'd sold for millions just after she passed. We agreed never to spoil our children. We wanted them to build character, not entitlement. They knew I lived modestly. They never asked how I afforded my cabin, my car, or why I never seemed worried about bills, and I let them believe I was just getting by. So when the diagnosis came, I assumed one thing: at least my children would be there. They weren't. Daniel showed up 3 days after I called him. Emma took a week. We sat down in the sterile waiting room while the nurse explained the process of bone marrow testing and donation. She finished, smiled politely, and asked if they'd consider getting tested. Daniel frowned. I mean, isn't it painful? Emma avoided eye contact. I have work deadlines. I'm barely managing as it is. I stared at them, stunned. You'd let me die because it's inconvenient? Daniel replied with a shrug. Don't be dramatic, Dad. There must be other options. Emma chimed in. We're not a perfect match anyway. Isn't it risky? They didn't get tested. They didn't ask again. They just left. And I never heard from them for weeks. That night, I sat outside on the cabin porch, staring at the cold sky. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just hollow. Then I heard a knock. It was Marcus, my neighbor, 25 years old, quiet, polite, always offered to mow my lawn, shovel the snow. He lived in the rental unit next door with his mother. I never knew much about him, except that he worked odd jobs and never complained. He stood on the porch awkwardly. Mr. Grant, I overheard you talking to the nurse on the phone yesterday about your illness. I sighed. Yeah, word travels fast. I just wanted to say, I'd like to get tested. I mean, if I'm a match. I blinked. Why would you do that? He shrugged. You've always been kind to us. My mom says you gave her rent extensions when she lost her job. You even gave me your old laptop so I could finish school. It's the least I can do. I tried to protest, but he was already pulling out a folded paper from his jacket. Appointment confirmation. I go in tomorrow morning. I couldn't speak. I simply nodded, and he nodded back, and left. That was the last normal night I would have for a long time. A week later, the hospital called. Marcus was a match. The transplant was scheduled. I survived. I spent 2 months recovering, mostly alone. Daniel and Emma sent occasional "hope you're okay" texts. No visits, no support, just digital courtesy. Marcus, on the other hand, visited me twice a week. He brought soup, checked my mail, helped fix the busted furnace before winter came. He never asked for anything, not even a thank you. But I was watching, and I was remembering. By the time winter arrived, I had physically recovered. The doctors called it a miracle. But it wasn't a miracle. It was Marcus. He gave me a second chance at life, while my own bloodline offered excuses and distance. The contrast couldn't be clearer. One snowy afternoon, I sat in my living room watching the fire crackle when I received a text from Daniel. "Hey Dad, glad you're feeling better. We should catch up sometime." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Do you need anything?" Just a casual ping, the kind you send to an old colleague. I didn't reply. Later that week, Emma called, not to check on me, but to ask if I'd be updating my will now that I almost died. She laughed while saying it, but I could hear the intention behind the tone. "You know, just in case anything happens again, maybe it's time to get your affairs in order?" I answered calmly, "Already taken care of." Which wasn't a lie, because I had just updated my will. Everything, my estate, my investments, my properties, and the trust fund I had kept untouched, was now assigned to one person, Marcus Lane. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice, about rewarding character over genetics, about teaching a final lesson, not with anger, but with consequences. But I wasn't done yet, because I didn't want Marcus to just inherit the wealth. I wanted him to grow with it, understand it, lead it. So I asked him to dinner one evening. He arrived, still in his auto shop uniform, smelling faintly of oil and cold air. We sat down over stew and bread. I looked him in the eye and said, "I want to teach you everything I know." He blinked. "Sir?" "I used to run a company. I built it from nothing. I sold it 10 years ago and lived quietly. But I never stopped learning. And I think you're the right person to carry it forward." His eyes widened. "Why me?" I smiled. "Because when it mattered, you acted, and you asked for nothing in return." From that night on, Marcus became my student. We started with the basics: accounting, business law, management. He picked up fast. I gave him books, assignments, real-world scenarios. We met 4 times a week. Within months, he was analyzing investment portfolios like a seasoned advisor. At first, he was shy, humble, unsure of his place. But slowly, I saw a quiet confidence rise in him. And all the while, Daniel and Emma remained absent until they discovered something that pulled them out of their silence. I had sold one of my properties, a small commercial building downtown, for $2.1 million. Somehow, they found out. And just like that, the phone calls returned. But this time, warm and sugary. "Dad, we should do a family dinner soon. You've been on my mind a lot lately. I'm sorry I've been distant. Life's just been crazy." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I waited, watched, listened. Then one night, Daniel showed up unannounced. He brought a bottle of wine, called me old man like he used to when he was little, sat on my couch as if nothing had happened. After half an hour of small talk, he finally said it. "So, what's the plan with all your stuff? I mean the will and all." I looked him dead in the eye. "Don't worry, Daniel. Everything is already in good hands." He laughed nervously. "You mean Emma, right?" I didn't respond. He didn't laugh again. The next day, Emma called again. This time, she was more direct. "I just want to make sure things are fair. You know, for the family. After all we've been through." "After everything we've been through?" I nearly hung up. Instead, I replied, "Don't worry, Emma. The one who saved me is the one who'll carry my name forward." Then I ended the call. And that was the last time we spoke. I knew they wouldn't understand kindness, not until it cost them something. So, I made a decision. I called my lawyer, prepared the documents, and had my financial advisor execute the final transfers. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I disappeared. No funeral, no announcement. Just silence. The story was that I'd gone on a long, indefinite retreat for my health. Then that turned into rumors of hospice. Then, assumed death. Daniel and Emma didn't try too hard to find me. Not until they heard the news. A will reading. They arrived in full black. I watched from the next room through a private camera feed, unseen but very present. The lawyer, a longtime friend, cleared his throat. Mr. Grant's final will was recently updated. We'll begin with his statement. He played the video I'd recorded a month prior. My face appeared on the screen. Pale, tired, but firm. If you're watching this, I'm either dead or tired of pretending to be your father. To Daniel and Emma, I want to say this clearly. You left me when I needed you most. You valued comfort over compassion. And for that, you inherit nothing. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Daniel's mouth opened slightly. Emma went pale. To the one person who saved my life without hesitation, the one who showed me what real family means, I leave everything. His name is Marcus Lane. He is not my blood, but he is my legacy. The room fell silent. Daniel stood up. This is a joke, right? The lawyer shook his head. No, Mr. Grant. It's binding and legal. Everything, real estate, savings, investments, the foundation, it all now belongs to Mr. Lane. Emma began to cry, but not for me, for herself. Meanwhile, Marcus was speechless when I told him. He tried to refuse. Mr. Grant, I never asked for this. I don't deserve it. I replied with a quiet smile. That's exactly why you do. Weeks passed. Marcus settled into his role not just as heir, but as leader. I'd already connected him with trusted partners, mentors, and resources. He treated every meeting like a mission, every signature like a sacred act. He didn't buy luxury cars. He didn't move into a mansion. He renovated his mother's small home, paid her debts, and hired a caretaker so she could rest. He started a scholarship fund under my wife's name. He reopened a small tech startup employing local youth. In every way, Marcus honored what I had built, more than my own children ever did. And that's when I reappeared. It was a sunny afternoon when I walked into the building Marcus now ran. He looked up from his desk and stood immediately. Sir? You can call me George now. He smiled. You're alive. I am, and I've come to say thank you. Not for saving my life, but for giving me a reason to keep living. We sat. We talked. We planned. I told him I didn't want the spotlight or a title, just a quiet office where I could help when needed. He gave me more than that. He gave me peace. A week later, Daniel and Emma showed up at Marcus's office, demanding answers. He greeted them calmly, respectfully, but firmly. We don't owe you anything, he said, least of all an explanation. Emma shouted. Daniel cursed. But Marcus never raised his voice. I didn't steal anything, he told them. I earned what your father freely gave me. Before they left, he handed them envelopes. Inside, letters from me, handwritten, not of forgiveness, not of hate, but of finality. You lost a father long before the will, not when I died. but when you chose your convenience over my life. And that was the last they ever heard from me. Years passed, quietly, steadily. Marcus turned the company into something more than I ever dreamed. Not just profitable, but meaningful. Every quarter, he expanded not with greed, but with vision. He opened internship programs, started housing initiatives, sponsored community clinics, and through it all, he never once used my name to elevate himself. He let the results speak, and I watched it all unfold from the background. An old man with a second life, living above the noise, finally at peace. Daniel and Emma? I don't know exactly what happened to them. Last I heard, Daniel tried to sue. The courts dismissed it without a hearing. Emma sent a letter asking for one more conversation. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. You see, something shifted in me after the betrayal. Not bitterness, not revenge, but clarity. We don't always get to choose who we call family, but we can choose who we trust, who we invest in, who we leave the world to. I chose Marcus, and he proved me right. One day, as I walked the halls of the foundation he built, now named after my wife, I passed by a group of young interns. They didn't recognize me, just an old man in a sweater with coffee in hand. And I was fine with that, because I didn't need recognition. I didn't need praise. I had already received the greatest reward I could ask for, knowing I didn't die surrounded by those who failed me, but rather, I lived long enough to pass everything on to someone who truly earned it. People talk a lot about revenge, about getting even. But I've learned something more powerful. Rewarding the right person is more satisfying than punishing the wrong ones. Marcus didn't just save my life. He carried it forward. And for that, I will forever be proud. Not as a father, but as a man who finally saw true character.